Welcome to episode 108 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's February 16, 1867. We're in Sheffield, and today, football does something it has never done before. It starts a tournament. Not a one-off challenge match, not a we'll play you, then you'll play us, not a schoolhouse grudge settled on a muddy field with a different rulebook in every pocket. No, a tournament, a bracket, a prize, and a printed handbill with fixtures, officials, and kickoff times. It's called the Youdan Cup, and if you've never heard of it, you've been living in its shadow your whole life. Because once you invent the idea of a cup, you can't uninvent it. Football in the 1850s and 60s is still a sport trying to agree on what it is. There's no global rulebook. There isn't even a national one that everybody accepts. London has the Football Association. Sheffield has Sheffield Rules. Schools have their own codes. Clubs negotiate rules the way diplomats negotiate borders, carefully, stubbornly, and with a lot of pride. And Sheffield matters. By the late 1850s, Sheffield's clubs are among the first anywhere to do something revolutionary, write down rules, refine them, and actually stick to them. This is where football starts to look like a modern sport. Organized clubs, regular fixtures, and crowds who show up expecting something more than chaos. But something is missing. A tournament needs three things that early football rarely has at the same time: enough clubs, a shared set of rules, and a reason to risk your reputation in public. Because a tournament is different. In a friendly, you can shrug. In a cup, you're either still alive or you're out. And once you're out, the whole town knows. But how did we get here? Well, we got here because Sheffield in 1867 is a city of energy and ambition, industry, confidence, crowds, and a civic culture that loves competitions, in sport, in business, in status. Enter Thomas Youdan, a local impresario, a theatre and music hall man, a showman who understands that sport is entertainment before it is anything else. He puts up a silver cup, something tangible, something prestigious, and suddenly every match has stakes. And the organizers run it like an event. 12 teams, 12 aside, kick off at 3 o'clock sharp, no waiting for players. And if it's a draw after 90 minutes, you play extra time. If it's still a draw, you come back and do it again. This is not casual football anymore. This is scheduled football, administered football, football with consequences. The first draw is published like a theatre bill, 6 ties, 6 venues. And you can feel the city mapping itself through sport. Norton, Norfolk, Eccleshall Road, Hallam, the orphanage. So on this day in 1867, football history's very first cup kicks off with United Mechanics versus Norton, Mackenzie's versus Garrick, Hallam versus Healy, Norfolk versus Fir Vale, Broomhall versus Pittsmoor, and Milton versus Wellington. And if those names don't sound like famous clubs, that's the point. This isn't elite football. This is football's first tournament being invented by ordinary local teams, workshops, neighborhoods, worksites, in a city that simply decides, let's try this. Now, before we go any further, we need to talk about the single most Sheffield thing in this entire story: Rouges. Because the Youdan Cup is played in the era when a match can be 0-0 and still have a winner, thanks to a scoring system that modern fans would find completely alien. A goal is a goal, but a rouge is a lesser score, a kind of almost. In Sheffield Rules, if the ball goes behind the goal and you're the attacking side and you get there first, you can touch it down and claim a rouge. Think of it as football briefly flirting with rugby logic, a reward for pressure, a prize for territory, and in a low-scoring world, a way to separate teams when nobody can finish. And that matters because this tournament doesn't produce a flood of goals. It produces anxiety, pressure, scrambles, and rouge. The first round is played on February 16, and it's already chaotic in the best way. Norton beat United Mechanics by 1 goal and 3 Rouges to 1 Rouge. Mackenzie beat Garrick by 1 goal and 2 Rouges to nothing. Hallam beat Healy with 2 goals and 2 Rouges, but Healy even get a Rouge of their own. Norfolk sweep aside Fir Vale with 2 goals and 4 Rouges to nothing. Broomhall beat Pittsmoor by 2 Rouges to nothing, no goals at all. That's just Sheffield logic. Milton beat Wellington with 2 goals and 4 Rouges to nothing. So after the first Saturday, We're left with 6 clubs still standing, and the quarterfinal draw is set. Norfolk versus Bramall, Hallam versus Norton, Mackenzie versus Milton. And now you can feel something new entering the game. Tension. Because the cup is narrowing. Because there's a trophy somewhere at the end of this. Because somebody's going to become the first. The match that defines the Youdan Cup is the one that captures why cup football becomes an addiction. Hallam versus Norton. It's a quarterfinal. It's played at Norton. And it draws a crowd that, for 1867, is absurd. Thousands. And it ends goalless. No winner. No Rouges. So the replay, according to the regulations. Yes, 4+ years before the FA Cup, almost 160 years ago, there are replays and regulations. Sounds familiar? The crowd turns up again, because this is the cup now. This is the drama of we didn't finish it the first time. The replay is still tight, still frantic, still balanced on the knife edge of one moment. And then Hallam get it. Not a goal, a Rouge. A ball goes behind, the scramble happens, and a Hallam man reaches it first. Touchdown. Rouge. Hallam survive, Norton are out. And the tournament moves on with that new cup feeling in the air. You can play well, you can fight hard, you can hold your nerve, and one tiny moment decides your fate. And now we arrive at the business end. By the time the tournament gets to its final stage, the organizers are dealing with something else that will define football forever. Logistics. You can't stage the biggest matches on random local pitches anymore. You need a venue. So the later games are played at Bramall Lane, not yet the football cathedral it become, but already a place capable of holding a crowd and hosting an occasion. And here's the strange beauty of it. The first football tournament is being professionally staged before football is professional. Neutral venue, big crowd, public interest, and a sense that this is bigger than the clubs involved. The final itself is played on March 5th, 1867, Hallam versus Norfolk, and it plays out like a cup final before finals have a script. It's nervous, physical, scrappy, and again, goalless. No breakthrough, no clean finish, just pressure and attrition. And then, late, very late, the Sheffield Rules deliver their verdict. Hallam scores a Rouge, and because it was so perfectly described in Bell's life in London on March 9, 1867, I'll read it out aloud for you. Quote, after half an hour's play, the ball was kicked by Elliot, not through the goal, but just over it, and was touched down by Ash in splendid style after running round 2 of his opponents before getting to the ball, just securing a Rouge. End quote. How about that? Immediately after kickoff, Norfolk left their goal unprotected, and Hallam scored another Rouge. 2 small almost goals that become the difference between immortality and regret. The match ends 0-0 on goals, and Hallam win the Youdan Cup 2-0 on Rouge. Hallam FC are the first cup winners in football history. Because this is 1867 Sheffield, they don't stop there. Days later, there's a second place playoff between Norfolk and Mackenzie. Because why wouldn't there be? Because if you're inventing tournaments, you might as well invent the idea that second and third place matters too. And that's where it all comes from. And then comes the ceremony. The cup itself, the promised silver trophy, isn't ready yet. So Hallam are awarded something else, a richly ornamented claret jug presented at a dinner. It's wonderfully on brand for early football, ambitious, improvised, and still figuring out how to be formal. And yet, the significance is enormous, because from this moment, football has a new engine. The idea that you can win something that isn't a league, that you can be remembered for one tournament, and that a season can turn on a single match, that you can be cup winners. Now, the Youdan Cup is never held again. But why? Because its job is done. It proved the concept. It shows that a knockout competition can capture a city. It shows that rules can be standardized, at least locally, long enough to run a proper event. It shows that crowds will pay, show up, and care. And once you prove that, football doesn't need the Youdan Cup again. It needs the next thing. And the next thing comes quickly. The Cromwell Cup follows, then the FA Cup, then more cups, leagues, professionalism, global tournaments, and then Champions League, the World Cup, the Club World Cup, a whole universe of winners and losers created by brackets and deadlines. And it all traces back to this simple idea in Sheffield. Let's put up a trophy and let's see who wins. So what? Here's the big arc. The Youdan Cup doesn't just create a tournament, It creates the culture of elimination, the delicious cruelty of you're out, the magic of the underdog, the obsession that draws, replays, and tiebreakers. And it also shows you something else. Football's rules have always been political. Even in the first tournament, the sport is negotiating what counts, what matters, and who decides. Goals and Rouges, umpires and referees, local codes versus national ambitions. This is football, right at the start, doing what it will always do, growing faster than its governance can keep up. And finally, it reminds you that Sheffield is not a footnote, it's bedrock. We talked about Sheffield's football culture in episode 10 with the Zulus in 1879, and we were back in Sheffield only days ago in episode 106 about Derek Dooley in 1953. If you haven't listened to those two episodes, I highly recommend. And here's the deeper truth. Sheffield didn't just produce clubs and players, it produced ideas. And one of those ideas was a tournament. And Rouges, gone fast. Sheffield scrapped it in October 1868, and by the time Sheffield fully merged into the FA laws in 1877, there was no place left for that old almost score in the unified game. Let's close with three things to take away. First, the cup is an invention. It had to be imagined before it could be staged, and the Youdan Cup is the first time football turns imagination into a format. Second, early football was not just about skill, it was about systems. Rules like Rouge feel bizarre today, but they show a sport experimenting with how to measure dominance, pressure, and victory. And third, Sheffield didn't just help football start, it helped football scale. From local pitches to organized competitions, the Youdan Cup is the bridge. On this day in 1867, football kicked off its first ever tournament, the Youdan Cup, and invented the cup run. Every bracket since has been living off Sheffield's first idea. That's all for episode 108 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history. If you like this podcast, please follow it, rate it, and share it. It generally helps it grow. And if you got a football moment you want me to dig into, a match, a player, a scandal, a forgotten competition, email me at otd@17lawsguide.com. Tomorrow, episode 109, February 17, 1968, Cyprus, and their first ever competitive international win, and how sensational it was. See you then.